It's time for Slow TV Radio from the meeting point, broadcasting not only to Bilbao but throughout the world. Hello and welcome to another edition of Round the Table. And good morning, Ursula. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Very well, thank you very much. Hello, all our wonderful listeners at home, in Bilbao and around the world. So we've got a few interesting things coming up in this episode. We've got part 3 of our series of Learn These Words.
Is it part 3 already?
It's part 3 already, yes.
Wow.
And then we've got another episode of Interesting Word. We have a very interesting word that has come up in conversation this week. And then we have What's the Difference? We've got 3 in What's the Difference this week. And then we'll be discussing our topic of the week.
Which is?
Reading.
I like reading.
Yes. We do have another episode all about reading in English, but you'll have to go back and find that. That is in episode, I can't remember which episode, but the number is up on the screen now. So, let's have part 3 of Learn These Words. So, part 3 of Learn These Words. In the last instalment, we were looking at stomachache, architect, and chemist. There's an architect with a stomachache, and he's gone to visit the chemist. So, let's continue. Curtain and certain. The AI sounds a bit like E in these two words. Curtain, certain. The reason is the stress is on the first syllable, so the second syllable tends to get contracted down a bit, and in this case it's a little bit like an E. Curtain, certain. Whereas these two, captain and mountain, it's a little more like an I. But for the same reason. The stress is on the first syllable. The second syllable is contracted down a bit. So in all 4 of these words, curtain, certain, captain, mountain, so long as you put the stress at the beginning, you should be okay. But the second syllable is contracted down. Don't say mountain like you think it would be. It's mountain. And there's the captain looking at a mountain. Word. Word. This is an unusual word because you would think the OR in the middle would be pronounced OR. But when it's coming after the W, it's So word rhymes with third and bird. So there are 3 birds there. You can see the third bird is looking in the other direction. Word rhymes with third and bird. War, another one where the W is affecting the pronunciation. Normally the AR is pronounced R, like car, but with the W it's pronounced OR, like poor. So remember, when there's a war, there are lots of poor people. War rhymes with poor. Card. Here is a greetings card. It has a D on the end, not like car. Card, car. There is a car on this card. Card with a D, car without a D. Card, car. Castle, or castle, or castle. Various pronunciations of the A depending on where you come from. The more common English pronunciation is with a long castle sound. Whistle and listen. You hear that in all of these the T is not pronounced, especially in words with a STL spelling. Castle, whistle, listen. Castle, whistle, listen. Answer and sword have no W. Answer, sword. Answer and sword. Your doctor is not your daughter. Doctor, daughter. Doctor. You see, doctor has a K in it. Daughter has a long or sound. Your doctor is not your daughter. But your doctor likes laughter. Laughter. The word laugh is often a difficult one to pronounce because people get confused with all these A-U-G-H sounds and O-U-G-H. They're not always the same. So daughter, your female child, is your daughter. The medical person is a doctor. And when you say ha ha ha, that is laughter. Laugh. Laughter. Culture. Culture. Culture is cool. Culture is cool. It's not culture. Some people think it's pronounced culture, but it's not. Culture. If you say it slowly, you'll separate the T and the Y and get culture, culture. But if you're speaking quickly, the T, Y joins together into a Ch and you'll get culture. Just like in future and nature and furniture. There's a Ch in there. Culture is cool, but not culture. And I think that's enough for one lesson. We'll leave it there. We'll continue next week with more. Learn these words. Right, hope you enjoyed that. And now it's time for interesting word.
So, what's the interesting word you had this week?
Our interesting word this week is the word binge.
Binge.
Yeah, binge.
So, what's binge then? When would you use that?
Binge is when you do an activity in a very intensive way. You do a lot of something in a short period of time. And it's quite negative, something you shouldn't be doing. Not always, not always.
Like something you do, for example, the day before the exam, you do lots of studying?
Yes, you could have a studying binge, I suppose. It's not a collocation that I know. The first one that I ever became aware of was when they refer to binge drinking.
Oh.
And that's when people don't drink alcohol during the week, but they do it all on a Friday or a Saturday.
Yeah.
And they drink an excessive amount. That's called binge drinking. So sometimes you can have, there's two different structures. You can have a drinking binge, if you use it binge as a noun, or you can make a compound and say binge drinking. So
can you say I went binge drinking last weekend, for example?
Yes. It's not the kind of thing you would tell people about. It's normally a criticism of other people and social problems. I went binge drinking. It was great.
Maybe teenagers.
Oh, you might. Yes, you might.
Okay, no, I know. I was trying to think about it.
And then there was binge eating. And again, it's normally in the context of of problem eating.
Yeah.
So someone who's on a diet, for example, who are trying not to eat too much, and then they eat a lot in a very short period of time. That would be an eating binge or binge eating. Yeah. And you can also have a chocolate binge.
Yeah.
So again, it's normally something quite negative. You could have a shopping binge if you do a lot of shopping. Like on a Saturday, just go out and spend loads of money.
What about if you do your shopping in the supermarket?
No, that's not really a binge. No, it has to be
clothes.
Overindulgent, let's say. Excessive. I suppose
Okay.
if you did excessive shopping in the supermarket.
Well, you see some trolleys in the supermarket.
Well, yeah, but that's regular, every week kind of stuff that you need, isn't it?
Okay.
No, a shopping binge would just be spending a lot of money. Again, possibly money that you shouldn't really be spending, I suppose. It's a little bit negative. In the more positive side, you can have a cleaning binge.
Okay.
Sometimes if you start cleaning your kitchen, you get carried away. There's a good phrasal verb, to get carried away. You get very involved in it and you forget to stop. And you spend all day cleaning, and in the end of the day you've cleaned a lot more than you planned on doing. So you can have a cleaning binge, loads of cleaning in one day. Completely clean your house, take all the food out of the cupboards and clean the shelves and everything. And the reason we were talking about it this week was a reading binge. So sometimes when you discover a new writer, you might then read all of the books by that writer.
Yeah.
So you can have a sci-fi binge. Some people get into science fiction
Yeah.
and they say, I went on a sci-fi binge when I was a teenager or something like that. And they read all the science fiction books.
What about when you watch like 5 episodes of the series in an evening? Is that the watching binge? Or?
Yeah, a viewing binge. I
Viewing.
think. A viewing binge, I think is what they call it.
Okay.
And this is a new thing because in the past, if you were
You
watching...
couldn't do that.
No, you couldn't, no. Because if you watched an episode and it was on Thursday night, you watched episode 1, you've got to wait a whole week before you get episode 2.
Yeah.
But now we've got HBO and Netflix and things like that.
Yeah.
And things on DVDs, you can watch the whole series.
DVDs are already old.
Yeah, I know, but I'm thinking of when we had a binge on Lost and we watched like several series in a weekend.
Yeah.
So, there's a viewing binge. So, binge, interesting word. It's all about doing a lot of one activity in a very short period of time, in a very intensive way.
Very good. Very interesting.
So that's my interesting word of the week. So, shall we discuss reading, or would you like to do what's the difference?
Let's go to what's the difference first.
Okay, let's have what's the difference. So, you've got some what's the difference there for us to discuss.
Yeah, and as we are talking about reading, maybe we want to see the difference between literary and literacy.
Literary literacy. Literacy is the ability to read.
Okay.
Yeah. Read and write, I suppose.
Yeah.
Literary is referring to books and literature. So you can have a literary club, people that like a reading group,
Yeah.
which we'll talk about shortly. So literacy is your ability to read and write, and literary is your sort of studying of literature.
Okay. And then what about criticism, and review?
Well, they're all nouns. A critic is a person.
Okay.
Right? The person is the critic, and they normally write reviews. So a review is something describing, or talking about a book or a film.
Okay.
Or
So they don't write criticism. If it's negative?
Well, criticism doesn't have to be negative. It's normally in the negative context that we think of it, but there is positive criticism.
Okay.
And there might be criticism within the review. A review is like an article that appears in a magazine or newspaper or online now. And you get reviews. Traditionally, they're book reviews, film reviews, theatre reviews. But if you look online at an online newspaper and look at the reviews, they've got comedy shows, musicals, even computer games. When new computer games come out, somebody plays the game and writes about it, which sounds like a good job.
Yeah.
Writing reviews.
If you like playing video games, yeah.
So criticism is also a noun, but it is your comments on what you think is good and what you think is bad. Like
so it's more like your opinion.
Yes, it's like opinion, yeah. And it's normally more in the negative than in the positive. I think it's I don't know why that is. I think it's because people probably comment when there's something that they don't like, rather than what they do like. So criticism generally has a sort of negative feel to it. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's those three anyway. Critic, criticism and review.
So what about these two phrases? Make the most of and take advantage of.
I think these get mixed up because I think you use the same thing in Spanish for both of these.
Yes.
Take advantage of is more negative than make the most of. Make the most of is...
to enjoy, yeah?
Is to enjoy enjoy a situation. So if I've got... There are lots of books. Let's keep on the reading topic.
Yeah.
There are lots of books that I've been meaning to read for a long time. If I say, next week I'm on holiday, I don't have to work, so I'm going to make the most of my free time and read all these books that I've been meaning to read for a long time.
Okay.
But I'm not taking advantage of it. Taking advantage of is gaining from another person. And imagine if someone's a bit simple and they don't understand things and you manage to cheat them out of their money.
Yeah.
You're taking advantage of those people.
Yeah.
So taking advantage is normally a bit more negative and usually at the expense of someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Whereas make the most of, there's no losers in that situation. Whereas taking advantage of, there might be a loser in the situation.
Yeah.
So take advantage of is more negative.
Very good. I can see why people can get those two mixed up.
Yeah, it's like a lot of these phrases which are actually very similar.
Yeah.
But there's a subtle difference in the context of when we would use one and when we would use the other.
Yeah. Very good. So, shall we start with our topic then?
Yeah, so topic of the week is reading. Let's talk about reading. So, as I said, we have discussed reading before. Part of the topic this week was reading books in English and the problems of reading books in English, different suggestions that people had, etc., which I think we've covered in a previous video. But what I wanted to talk about was reading groups and the advantages of having a reading group, because we're thinking of doing this one in the meeting point coming up soon. A few people have either bought the book or downloaded it.
Oh, really?
Oh, a few people have started reading An Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley.
Oh, very good.
And according to some people, it's quite easy. It's not a complicated book to read, which is good news. So the advantages of a reading group. Now, you've got experience with reading groups, haven't you?
Yeah, we used to run a reading club in the library.
Yeah.
Sorry. And it was a very, very good experience because you never realize when you read a book and you read it on your own, that's it. You finish the book and then you put it away and that's the end. But when you have a reading group and other people give their opinions, then you realize that there's so much to a book, really. Because people read different things. They see different things in the book.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you can go back and read a book again after you've been discussing it with another person. You read it in quite a different way.
Yeah.
Like I read The Catcher in the Rye, and I hated it the first time. I thought it was an awful book. But I have a friend who loves it, and she was so enthusiastic talking about it that I had to go back and read it again. And the second time I really liked it.
I think that's because maybe she told you about the context, or because I found when we did the book club, we normally gave like an introduction to the author and the context and the main ideas, because sometimes it's difficult to imagine the situation. You know what I mean? Like this is a teenager, yeah? The main character is a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as an adult, you read it and you think, this kid is terrible. But then that's not the point of the book. Maybe they're trying to show something.
And I think it's very easy to read a book from our modern perspective, and we don't see what impact that book would have had at the time when it came out. Because it might have been something very original, but now a book like that one that's written from the teenager's perspective in the 1950s or whenever it was written, maybe that was a new idea in the voice of a teenager, had never been done before. And it's also true with some of those early science fiction type books. Well, they're not science fiction, but
they were at the time.
I think they're the predecessors to science fiction, like The Invisible Man and the H.G. Wells type books, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But because they've been around so long, you sort of know approximately what the story is. But if you forget what you know about it and try to put your mind into the mind of a person reading it when it first came out in 1870 something, it would have been an amazing book.
I think the problem with those books is that we've seen the films.
Yeah, and there's so many different versions.
Yeah, and you have the image. But if you read the book, because Frankenstein, for example, you have the image of this monster,
Yeah.
But if you read the book, it's nothing like what you expect from the film.
No.
Same with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
It's quite different when you actually read it. Yeah. And the structure of the book is quite good as well.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of mysterious. You don't really know what's going on. It's quite confusing.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to be confused because we know what the story is.
Yeah.
But at the time, it must have been very mysterious of what's going on in this book. It's written from different angles, and it's like bits of memory and bits of letters and things like that. It's all a bit fragmented, as it were. Quite difficult to understand what's happening.
Yeah, so it's very interesting book to read, I think, just to, like you say, to look at it from that era.
Yeah. So, book clubs and swapping ideas, and also it gives you motivation if you join a book club.
Yeah.
If other people are doing it at the same time, you've got to get it done by a certain time.
And you think more about it.
Oh, yeah, like when you read, like the second book, you mean, after you've done the book club before. Your way of reading changes. Yeah.
But even when you are reading the book, you are thinking about the things you are going to talk about. The things that otherwise you just read the story and that's it.
Yeah. And you're thinking about different ways of analysing what's happening in the story because you're thinking about how you're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would change your way of reading.
Yeah. I think it's more like studying than reading, really. Not studying in the sense that you have to memorize, but analyze more the book.
Yeah.
And I also found that it's very interesting, and I guess this is related to different personalities. But for some people, the characters are the main theme, so they really analyze the characters. Whereas for other people, it's maybe the story, or for others will be
the language.
The language.
Yeah. I think it depends on different tastes for different people, because some books are very wordy and descriptive, and the language that's used, if you read Dickens, for example, it's all in the descriptions, and the way he writes the language is like painting a picture. It's beautiful. I love Dickens. But for others, it's like, I've had an Agatha Christie binge in the past. Well, I read hundreds of Agatha Christie short stories a couple of summers ago, and it's amazing the plots that she conceives, but it's not in the writing, and it's not the development of the characters. The characters are quite
flat,
shallow, you know. There's no depth in the personalities or anything like that. It's just the Lord something and the local vicar and sporty young man with his fast car and the girl who plays golf or something like that.
They're quite stereotypical.
Yeah, they're stereotypical characters, but it's the plot, the intrigue of the plot and the complexity of that side of it. That's what she's good at. But she's not great with her language or anything. But it still makes a good read.
Yeah.
It was still incredibly popular after nearly 100 years, I guess.
Yeah.
So different writers are for different readers, really. Different people like different things, like everything in life.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you were doing music, sometimes it's the tune, sometimes the lyrics are saying something important to you. Sometimes it's good to dance to, sometimes it's good to relax to.
Yeah.
So different writers for different people. The other thing I was going to talk about was concentration and the ability to concentrate, and also what we gain from reading because of the effort required. That was something that kind of came up this week. Do you think it's getting more difficult to concentrate on things?
Yes. In fact, I found it really difficult to concentrate. And once I tried to time myself, see how long I could stay reading, and it was less than 5 minutes. And I thought, what? But I used to read for hours. What's going on? To me, it's the mobile.
Yeah.
So I thought I have to change this. And this summer I started reading again novels, not very difficult ones. And I'm very happy because now at least I can spend an hour reading. But when I timed myself and I thought, this is amazing.
Yeah, I think we read in very short bursts now. In a couple of sentences, we read the headline that comes up on the mobile, and maybe you read the first sentence of an article, and then we move on to something else. There's so many things to read that we're constantly skipping to the next thing, aren't we? And the sitting down and concentrating on a book, I think, is going to be... I mean, if it's getting difficult for us, and we've spent a lot of time in the past reading, and we're sort of losing the ability, there might be a lot of people coming through that have never had that ability.
Yeah, I think really you have to say, I'm going to read for half an hour. And for young people, I don't know what's going to be like, because everything is filmed now. You don't even have to study, because you can watch a video on internet, and which is good. Yeah. But I think reading is important.
Well, it's the difference between an active pastime and a passive one. Because when you watch a film or something, or even watch a documentary, it's not the same as reading a book about something.
Yeah.
You sit there and it's just... I mean, you don't have to do anything, you just absorb the information. Whereas if you're reading, it requires effort. So it also gives more satisfaction.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
When you finish a film, you don't have the same satisfaction that you get from reading a book.
Well, no, I don't think you get any satisfaction.
Well, you get a little bit, I suppose, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, there's some sense of achievement with reading a book because you made that effort.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know if it will go out of fashion. I suppose there are young people. I've heard that there are young people that read books.
Yeah. Our nephew is into reading now, and I don't know. I think it's really good that he can half an hour every day.
Yeah.
To do a bit of reading. I think it's good.
Yeah. We were also discussing this week the future of sort of libraries and bookshops. We could have done that in What's the Difference, couldn't we?
Oh, yeah.
Library and bookshop. I won't play the jingle, but a library is where you borrow books and then you return them when you've finished with them. Bookshop is where you actually buy a book. Anyway, we were discussing the future of libraries and bookshops, and decided they won't disappear. There might be fewer in the future, or they might not be as important, because when they invented cinema, they probably thought it was the end of theatres. And theatres survived, not as important as they were before cinemas.
Yeah.
Cinemas came along and they took a large section of that audience.
Yeah.
And then television came along and they probably thought it was the end of cinema, but it wasn't the end of cinema.
Yeah.
It just took a large section of the cinema audience. So as we have more online material and e-books and all that kind of stuff, it won't completely destroy the traditional books. It won't be the end of the bookshop. It will just take a large section of that audience.
Yeah, because if you look at the bookshops now, they have books, but they also have games and other things. So I think this bit will become bigger and bigger, and the book section will be like, they say, why is it called bookshop?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. But I think it will still survive because there's so many people that, like going into a bookshop, even if you don't know what you're going to buy, for a lot of people, you could easily go in there and spend a lot of money and come out with far more books than you'll ever have time to read. There are so many books that are...
Yeah, and I think parents, they buy books for their children.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, that'll be always, no? That part of society.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to buy books for children as well, which is another part of the debate. So I think that's all we have time for this week. We'll have to leave it there and get on. We'll be back next week with the very complex topic of prestige. Don't know what people are going to be saying about that in the week, but prestige is our complicated topic. So until then, have a good week. Until next week. Bye.
Bye.